Adi and I recorded 2 conversations. The first took place while she was still on Maui, just before she journeyed back to her homelands. Not long after she returned to Israel, the war with Iran broke out. Once things had settled enough, she reached out, and through our reconnection, we felt it would be meaningful to record another conversation for the project. This offered her a chance to share more of her richly layered story and to illuminate some of the deeper threads woven through the land and people of that long contested region where she grew up. The second conversation is the one you'll hear today. If you'd like to listen to our initial conversation, you're invited to visit my Substack, Hearthwoven, where it's available to listen for free. You can find a link in the show notes. And if the extra content resonates with you, consider becoming an early subscriber, as there's much more to come. And if you haven't already, I also want to warmly invite you to subscribe to Wild Heart Revival on your favorite podcast platform, and to join us on YouTube for the visual side of the project. Your presence, ratings, shares, and thoughtful comments truly nurture this humble offering's ongoing organic growth. So thank you for being here. Now, let's soften and sink into today's conversation. Welcome to Wild Heart Revival, a gathering place for heartfelt conversations and stories as pathways of renewal and revival. I'm your host, Tay Tayari, and today's guest is Adi Cohen. In this tender and unflinching conversation, Adi shares from the deep well of her lived experience as a woman of Iranian, Syrian, Iraqi, and Israeli descent. Lineages shaped by exile, migration, and the generational longing for safety. Speaking from within landscapes of both inner and outer war, she reflects on growing up in Israel amid conflict, tracing her journey through dissonance, doubt, and division. What emerges is not a story of blame, but an embodied invitation to live in the mystery, to return to love as the essence of power, and to meet chaos with presence. Rooted in the dark feminine path of trust, tenderness, and prayer, Adi calls us to soften, to listen, and to feel into the deeper current beneath separation, the unspoken longing of all people to live freely, in peace, and in love. For nearly a decade, Adi has devoted herself to spiritual growth and the awakening of the profound intelligence that lives within each of us. Her path is rooted in ancient rituals and sacred ceremonies and informed by a wide range of teachings, from Yoga Alliance and Zen Buddhism to Reiki healing, somatic intelligence, contact dance, Kabbalah, and sexual shamanic healing. These threads are woven into a living tapestry of transformation, healing, and return. Adi supports others in shedding old stories and reclaiming their authentic power. She guides individuals and groups into somatic awakening through movement, breath, voice, and embodied practice to help release stored trauma and emotions. At the heart of her work is the creation of ceremonial and sacred space. In these safe containers, temple consciousness is awakened through the body, reconnecting people with their life force energy. She believes that when we have the courage to shed shame and limitation, we open the door to deep transformation, not just for ourselves, but for the collective healing of humanity. So, let's slow down and sensitize in this space between ruin and renewal as we remember how to walk the path of love, peace, and resistance together with our dear guest, Adi Cohen.
So,
as we were mentioning before we started the recording, I think that offering some context is a good place to start. So I'll pass it over to you, and you can invite us into your world, and we'll see how it unfurls from there. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you for having this conversation and bringing these deep topics that are very much as part of my inner world, and I feel like as the collective, as our whole world. So I was just bring myself first. My name is Adi, for those who doesn't know me, and I grew up in Israel. In this lifetime, I was born in Israel, and I grew up for a lineage of families who were immigrant from their countries. I'm a daughter for Syrian, Iraqi, and Iranian families. Parts of them were exiled out of their lands and came here as soon as these countries, Israel, were born on 1948. And as soon as they arrived, they kind of accomplished their deepest longing of coming to this land and being able to build a safe home, a safe nation for their religion or for their belief, as per of what they were taught to live or to believe in, and as per of their culture, and as per of this culture of what we're living here. And as a child, there was a very much dissonance that I felt for many moments of not understanding like why I was born to this land, felt disconnected in a deeper sense, and kind of also kind of doubting my soul. Why did she chose this story? It was overwhelming for many times of growing up through different wars and seeing how the survival sense of living is very much felt here in the communities, even though it's not very much spoken, but we are the children for these generations who were never felt safe in their homes. So it kind of like forced us to build this country and to build safe homes. They were never felt safe on some level. As we are surrounded by countries that by politic, it's has been said, we're not welcome to stay here on this land. So we needed to fight back all of these generations and still do. And for me, it's really hard to see this continuation of cycles of wars and separation and devastating complete communities and lives of people just for controlling and manipulating the sense of who is this land is belong to, which the land was never belonged to anyone. And I feel that was kind of pushed me out of this home of Israel 3 years ago. For many years, for over a decade, I was a traveler, and the nomadic soul is a part of me also in this lifetime. I took it and I inherited very blissfully to my journey. And so the last 3 years, there was a very much of kind of a deep calling to just go outside of the land and explore different cultures and see that life in this kind of like what I've been taught from different lenses, and just understanding that these games are being played on different colors and shapes and designs by different nations. I don't see much of a difference, but I see when I looked at through my travels at the people, we share in common the main and deeper prayer, as I said, is just living freely in this world. So there is a big gap, between us, the people, the humans, the souls that were incarnated in these bodies to live and to embody divine in this on this earth, versus different organizations, nations, regimes that kind of like pulls this system, this way of living that has been orchestrated for many years, many thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
into a whole like colonialization and understanding that we are part of this game. And I feel like now we are awakening it to it for the past 5 years, even more. Um, and just seeing how we've been blinded for many years. And that was actually served what it has to be played in these lives. I mean, like, I'm not personally in a place of blaming anyone, even though I've been suffered a lot through my life as I see it. But my awakening journey was kind of brought me into a place of understanding that there is no one to blame, but more of just consciously choosing otherwise, and just understanding how do I navigate through this inner war, which reflected in the collective, and just knowing what is my path, what is my vision, where am I walking towards, and what is my prayer to establish and to accomplish here in this world through my life. And so this is where it's my focus, and I'm a complete devotee for this path. Um, yeah, through my story and through all of us, through
Mm-hmm.
our whole story of our planet. Yeah.
Mm. Beautifully said. Yeah, thank you for that. Um, Maybe before we talk about most recent happenings for you, I'm curious to hear you share more about that inner transformation that has occurred over time, where you, like, was it at some point that you did blame and that you did project out
Mm-hmm.
and other, folks out of fear, and so now you've turned that inward and it's different for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell us a little bit more about that. I know it's probably, years of process, but I'd love to hear you just describe that some
Mm-hmm.
more, if you will.
Yeah, first, as a human, I still do that.
Yeah.
The whole game is just to awaken to that faster, or just choose not to be reactive to that, because it's a part of the human game. What I see that for years I was blaming the nation, the culture, the Judaism, the religion, even, like making me feeling more restricted and abandoning my own freedom as a woman to walk on this earth the way I want, and to open up myself for different things that religious are not a fan of. So what I would just constantly doing is just finding who to blame, whether it's my parents, the family, the culture, the land, the politician, the prime minister. And what I've realized that it's not just because it's my story, we'll always have someone to blame. If we were looking for, if that's the movement, if this is this is how I dance my life, I will always find someone, an external force to blame. And so yeah, it doesn't take me into the place where I want, is finding inner stability, inner peace, inner fulfillment of who I am for the sake of who I am, and not finding different things to fulfill lacks that the mind is actually creating out of pain, out of unprocessed suffer. And so I kind of like dedicated the last 9 years, as soon as my mom passed away, to understand on a deeper level what does it mean, the meaning of life, and the differences between acting out of fear versus creating out of love, and just finding that dance of where am I taking all of those past wounds, past stories, and alchemize them through different tools and practices and healing modalities into the place where I actually want to live my life consciously, and to be a creator of the path that I'm walking day by day. So yeah, this
Mm-hmm.
is that was the shift, I believe, and it's a continuous journey.
Mm-hmm.
But the past 9 years was the major transformation that I've experienced in my life since my mom passed away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I'm reminded and just publishing a conversation with Urena Jackson this week, and she said something that really struck me. Of course, it's so obvious, but it's really potent, and you reminded me of it right now. She said, liberation is a lifetime experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not seeking an arrival, and we're not seeking a point where all of a sudden we're liberated, that it's a lifelong experience, and also it's relational inherently. And so when you said that you've been exploring, well, what is the meaning of life? I know, like, really, that's an ineffable question, right? That you can't really encapsulate it in words, but I'd love to just hear you describe that for a moment, just
Well,
kind
you
of
would challenge me anyway.
exactly. Tell us the meaning of life, Didi.
Out of many, I feel like what's alive in me at the moment, which this is life, what we exist, what we experience in the moment, that's all that we have, is constantly stay open to learn what you don't know and understanding that you would never know. And so finding just like that emptiness of the space of the field where you can enter on a deeper level in yourself, and to bring that into engagement with whatever you come in relationship with, and finding the space in between. From the knowing to the knowing, there is the unknown, and in the unknown, in the mystery, this is where life is.
Yeah, beautifully said. I've had shivers multiple times since we've began. So there's a lot of energy moving in me, and I can feel some tears in my eyes even. So I'm really, really feeling what you're saying, and I think I'm also just feeling the context of your life and the life of your family and your people and your friends and the people of that region. It's really, and of course it's not isolated. It's not isolated to what some call the Middle East or Western Asia, that it's global, this conflicted psyche of humanity at the individual and collective level. But let's now focus on what's been happening recently for you, because you've been away from Israel, and most recently you came back, and it was this very fascinating timing of you arriving back in the homeland. And so fill us in on how that landing has been, and then we'll unpack that in some important ways.
So the way I see it, that in a very divine way, I was guided and led to be here in the most intense times for the past 2 years. Right before October 7th, I arrived to visit Israel from my travels abroad. And 2 weeks later, the attack was happening. And so I stayed here longer for a few months. And after integrating these devastating moments of just really feeling a deep trauma that occurred in our land, and still continuing and evolving and kind of moving in different ways in the society with the citizens. But that was a very collapsing moment for all of us on this land, and finding a deeper truth where we were blinded to see things that were kind of planned beyond the scenes and we were not aware of in our sides and in different other sides. I don't see that as Israel is separated from Gaza or from Iran or from the United States. So from my point of view, everything is planned and in a very smart way. And I felt that things were just coming up, hidden secrets that we were not aware of. And that was a very crash moments of betrayed, a feeling that you cannot trust basically on anything in this system. That was my experience. And so after a few months of integrating this and even going for Vipassana and just like really bringing that cycle into a deep healing in me, not running away, not trying to change it, but more of integrating that change because it's a change. The land since has not stayed the same as we know it before then. So there was a deep grief of processing this change. And then so later on, I continued my travel and coming back here for this chapter, for this visit right like 10 days before the war with Iran has started. And that was not again. I was like, wow, someone is really like guiding me to be here in these moments. And that was a shock, but that was so different than October 7th as my consciousness also, it's in a different level. And so understanding also the game, that it's a game and there it's another sphere that has been played on this earth. And I was kind of forced to expand my tool, my vessel, my capacity to see how can I still, in the midst of all this chaos, play in different spheres and just understanding myself through different experience. And that was very interesting. That brought me into a deeper connection to my story, to my history, to understand, yeah, now it actually made sense for even for the slight moments of finding resentfulness towards my story and like why do I still need to like grieve so much and suffer so much and be worried about my family, my community, my friend, in wherever I go. It's for me it's not reasonable. Like why would I live that kind of life? I would never be free or happy with any choice that I would ever make. And that actually brought me into a realization that this is actually like every curse can turn to be your blessings, depends of the inner work, obviously, of what we do with that. And then that was a great opportunity for me through this last chapter with the war with Iran, is understanding that my Iranian roots, my Israeli roots, were coming here together to bring peace in myself within all of those different dynamics and entities and forces that kind of like tearing me apart in those moments of our, as you said, the psychic games of our humanity. And that's kind of like brought me into a place of understanding I was meant to find that balance. I was meant to hold these polarities, and I was meant to even practice in a deeper sense what is detachment, of not being neither Iranian or Iraqi or Syrian or Israeli, not being related to any type of religion, not being related necessarily to any type of justice, of whose side is right, is understanding the complexity of all and finding in the space of the in-between that this is where life is. So as long as we're keeping ourselves apart from finding that mutual ground, we will always keep that inner war within ourselves in the individual sense and in the collective. And that was, okay. I was just expanding my capacity to just hold more, neither happiness or sadness, neither just love or fear, just finding the integration and how there are actually those different sides comprehending each other. And so the same as Israelis and Palestinians. And there's a beautiful movement, as I share with you in our last call, there's a beautiful movement called Standing Together of the people, literally the people, the Israelis and the Palestinians coming together and protesting against the regime, understanding that we're not interested in war. This is not what our souls were coming here for. And the game was planned for us to be unconsciously participating in this game and finding ourselves in this righteousness instead of opening ourselves into the new version, the new evolution of the new world of who we were meant to become, and not staying so attached and linger on the past and what we do remember of who we were in the past. And so the constant change that is requesting from us to be facing and willing to co-create with that and to be the cosmic dancers in Israel, in every place, as you said, it's a global change. And so we were coming here, especially in these times, to be a cosmic dancers that can bring that consciousness and this awareness to fight back. And that's not through war. And it's through anchoring the presence with love, knowing that there is no right or wrong. It's just a concept. There is no black or white. It's just an opinion. There's no like or dislike. And yes, with that, I would just love to say, because I haven't mentioned this in our call, there are forces that went out of control. And so sometimes also in the Bible, also in some warriors, as we spoke about in Far Asia, they will fight back when the time is needed. And so that's the spirit that I feel that is awakened in me, to be that spirit warrior, and to whatever it comes, to know that love is the cure for all. And we were meant to come together, and we just need to find a way over and over again, like any relationship that we do create in this world, with a mother, with a father, with a beloved. We need to find a way. That's how we're going to hold the relationship, keep living, evolving, and growing. Yeah.
So powerful. So the rupture or the wound of war that you've experienced in the last few years at two different points, that these ruptures or wounds were actually doorways. They were invitations. They were initiations into deeper layers of your essential nature through your conscious choice. I'm reminded, you bring this up often, Michael Meade says, the wound is also a womb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about the power of the womb and the woman and femininity, that this war-mongering mentality that is so rampant across our great mother is, from my perspective, this incredibly distorted, hyper masculine domination culture that is coming from a wounded place. It's coming from fragmentation at different levels. And so to remember that the wound doesn't have to lead to fragmentation, that the rupture doesn't have to cause division. Like, that's one pathway. And like, that's the pathway that's been taken for a long time, over and over again. Not by everyone, but by many. And then there's this other pathway that remembers that the wound is also can be a womb, that you can gestate life-affirming qualities, virtues, that motherliness and deep femininity can be born through the rupture. And that's what I'm hearing you say in your own words, that you're deepening and rooting into your power. And of course, you're a woman, and you have masculine and feminine, and yet you are a woman. And what I know of you is you are powerfully feminine. And so how are you seeing that? Because I know that you're also deeply exploring dark wisdom. And I would say that the womb is like the center of dark wisdom. And so tell us a little bit about that, if that feels like it makes sense to you.
Yes, of course. because you would feel that if there is a game that's being played in a certain speed or pace, and that you need to match that vibration to kind of like recreate a new fragment of what is your conscious decision of the way of living, that it cannot match. Also, I believe Einstein said you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness. And so I cannot fight back the system or the way of these colonialization of this world in the same techniques of fighting back. And so that was required me to find more of my inner womb. And what does it mean to stay in that dark mystery cave, mysterious cave that is just not letting you know any answer or any kind of a vision for the future? It's only through the felt sense. It's only through really allowing myself to dive deeper and deeper to find trust that can come only within. And when the times that I felt such a deep betrayed by my country, by certain education that I've received as I grew up, or different levels of kind of restrictions of our culture, of our religion, I felt that the only place that I can really find the inner truth is within myself. And what life taught me is that the more that I will allow myself to be in that mystery, in that darkness, and practice the ability to lean back, not to kind of like surge in the mystery, what is the answer? It's actually more of the sense of I'm going to lean back and I'm going to find a deeper trust in myself, within myself, with God, with spirit, knowing that every wave of emotion, every wave of uncertainty, every wave of fear, it's a temporary sensation. And it's all about the sensation levels of my body. As my body, this organism, again, it's a reflection of the planet Earth, which is the microorganism. And understanding that if I do find resentment towards different emotions or energetic waves or organs in my body, or the way I look, or the way I speak, or the way I show up, it's as if I am supporting this separation, this division within myself. So I cannot expect doing otherwise in the world. And so the whole practice for me is just coming back and finding more of that sense of the femininity, which says, sit and accept and know how to hold this space with trust to whatever comes, to whatever you feel. Like a good mother, when the child is coming. I don't have children, but I can just imagine, because I can feel my womb. What does it mean when a child is coming and crying? Would you tell the child, why the fuck are you crying? Like, you need to be someone else, or you need to feel something else. And so as if you will come to anything that is happening on the planet, whether if it's a tsunami or a earthquake or whatever it is, and you're going to say, what the fuck are you doing, mother? Why are you bringing those to us? It's a friction of a cause and effect. And as he brings us those messages to awaken to what is happening, the best practice that we can do is just to sit and listen and learn how to increase our vessel, to strengthen our capacity to hold more and to feel more, because we are energetic beings. We are needing to vibrationally matching our frequency to Mother Earth, so then we can create harmony. And if we don't listen to her, obviously I will not understand what is my inner womb as a feminine, and also you as a man, and all men, as the energetic womb is telling you, of learning what does it mean to be conceptually understanding yourself beyond the body, beyond being a human. And what are you a part of? What are you connecting to? And it's beyond the things that we can grasp with our mind, with our logic mind. and it's through the felt sense of the experience itself. So the more I create space for the womb to occur and to just sit back and finding in the mystery different experiences that I don't need to label them as something that I know, is more of just like finding the peace that can be cultivated within myself. And I feel that's what we require to do with one another and with different groups, with different cultures. We can come together to feel each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to understand where you're coming from. I would never actually understand what type of education you've received and culture you grew up in. I would never understand. Not with my mind, but I can feel
Mm-hmm.
through your energy. And this is where we are connecting beyond the separation
Yeah.
and knowing we're all in this together.
Yeah. So well said. And of course, I can't understand what it's like to grow up in Israel and to have war at your doorstep your whole life. I have no idea, right? And so someone, if I speak of peace,
Mm.
someone might counter me and say, oh, that's a really privileged thing for you to say.
Mm-hmm.
I have compassion for them saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same rate, I would respond by saying, I'm not the only one, right? So you're speaking to it too. And there are others, men and women. And I'm thinking specifically of some mothers in Israel after that attack on Israel, October 7th, that they came out and they, their sons and their children were murdered in this attack. And so the age-old story is retaliation, resentment, retaliation, eye for an eye. And these women used their womb wisdom, their dark wisdom, their femininity to engage in that very process that you just described so beautifully, to then come forward and show that there's a different way,
Mm-hmm.
that there is a way of peace, that just because their children died for no good reason at that level,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yet there is a good reason in the sense that it opened this incredible doorway to true peace.
Mm-hmm.
Those women who lost their children, I can't imagine the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they chose to say no more. So that strengthens my resolve in the knowing that I feel deep in my body that peace is possible. And it's not only possible, it's necessary. I don't see any other way. So it's so important. And I just want to read a short poem here by Rainier Maria Rilke, that wonderful mystic of poetry. He says, quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth in the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am.
I feel like this, if I can share, this poem is beautifully described what this mother that you've mentioned did. Is like courageously go beyond her personal story and understanding that she is. She is who she is. It's beyond the personality of who she is playing through her body. Is what was her message to give through her story to the whole show, and to support, to be in service of that, coming from a goodwill to help each other to remember that we are as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel what you've referred to, being here and kind of shouting or talking about peace, can be triggering for many people. And I can also very compassionately understanding that
Mm-hmm.
as it's a trauma built on trauma, built on trauma for many generations and many different levels of our psyche. So the armors are standing still for anyone that might come against whatever they are protecting, for them to be right, as being right is our place to gain power. And when we realize what is a true power, which is not about being superior to any other human or nation, on top of any other culture or community, is just understanding that as we came here to flow and to be in that flow of life force energy, is about staying open, allowing our body to stay open, to receive and to give, to receive and to give. Even the Kabbalah says, which is the higher state of consciousness, is that knowing and speaking to God as, give me so I can give back. I'm here to receive. And if you know that you were meant to receive since the day you arrived, so nothing was actually missing. You were never missing out anything. And so the longest that we will stay in that search of what are we missing, and finding these reasons or concepts of idea of fighting for those things that we are unconsciously thinking that we're missing, then we will never be remembering that we already have it all. We just need to shed off these armors, and understanding that there's nothing actually to fight for but love, as this the essence of who we are. And it might feel out of reach for many, and it might feel unrealistic for some people, because it's a hard work. Doing the inner work, it's a hard work. It was never meant to feel happy and joyful. It was going deep, descend into the descents of our shadows, and understanding the muddy moments of what does it mean in our human experience to be a human, a soul incarnated in this body. And so, yeah, it's courage that is required from us to be in that spirit, in that warrior spirit, to go and to dive deep into the descent, into the shadow, into the mystery of finding what is a true death. Because only through the death I will be able to receive more of life force energy and be more of connected to my true essence and to my true power, and not needing to seeking for it or looking for it in other external sources, but me.
Mm-hmm.
But me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. And I think that one of the core issues could be distilled down to really how we identify what our identity is, how we see ourselves. You know, the mother that stands up and uses her strength and her ferocity as a mother to call for peace, even in the wake of tragedy. that is a mother that recognizes that her motherliness is not separate from the great mother.
Mm.
I don't know if she'd say it like that, but that's what it is, right? Because she can look across that imaginary divide. You know, she can look over to Palestine or to Iran, and she can say, those are my children too. They're not separate. And so it's an expansion of identity. It's recognizing that you're so much more than what you think you are inside of the so-called boundaries of your flesh.
Mm.
You're so much more beyond your family, beyond your neighborhood, beyond your city, beyond your nation state and your religion, as you've been saying in your own way. You're so much more than that. So what does that moreness call you to? When you can really begin to play with, sense into, feel what that moreness might be. What's it beckoning from you? I'm
I feel like
reminded. Oh yeah,
really,
go ahead, please.
yeah, I feel like just because you were saying it, and I know that from a perspective of living here, and I'm currently now in Israel,
Yeah.
and I mean, what is it to go into the shelter a few times at night, being in that constant move of not knowing what's the tomorrow will bring, because
Mm-hmm.
the the whole market was kind of shut down, and
Mm.
no one could have predict what will be with the business, with the children that are constantly afraid, and with the houses that are collapsing and getting damaged by the ballistic rockets, and seeing people that are dying and getting hurt. And
Mm.
I'm taking just this perspective now about Israel, and I know also there are other sides, but I would focus on that because it's really hard being in that daily routine and
Mm.
still remembering that I'm beyond that,
Mm.
as there's a big survival fears that
Yeah.
are awakening and triggering your body, of not knowing how would you survive tomorrow with no money, with no finances, with no security,
Yeah.
without basic needs for you to be exist in your free will as a human. And
Mm.
so I feel that I would just have to mention that the target of our enemy was in the wrong place. And
Mm.
the more we will awaken to understand that it's not a group against a group, is there is a manipulative control that wants to keep us into a certain loop and into a certain system where we will constantly be afraid and being and obey to the system and to the new restricted rules that are applied under this under those different plays of wars and COVID and financial collapse, and just understanding that even though we are experiencing that shrink of not knowing what this collapse of the systems will actually bring in the day after, that required us, as you said, to find a deeper sense of trust within ourselves and come together, the people in communities, and rise in beyond of what we've learned so far, and that require from us to go beyond our personal story,
Mm.
as we are heading to new times. And when I will be targeting my focus there, I will stay in the shelter in the middle of the night, and I will have a smile in my face, and I will not shut out of fear, because I'll have trust in my body that this movement, this shift, actually supporting that awakening and that evolution of this new world that I personally pray for daily, to embody it in this life for ourselves and for the next generations. And and so I don't find that necessarily as having in this constant war of who is my enemy. Is just finding that everything that is poking me through the reality, whether if it's the ballistic rockets or the new rule that applied by the ministry or by by even like the relationship of family. Like just imagine being the whole family in such of a deep fear state. It's just understanding that all of those pokes was actually meant to let your soul rise in this body
Mm.
and embody this consciousness of knowing that the system was serving a certain time on this earth. There is going to be something beyond that
Mm-hmm.
in ourself, in the level of the liberation of the inner peace that we can create in ourselves and in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the faith is really important. Believing in that is really important. And that's what can overcome the fear or the moments of trauma that is constantly like bringing us into a deep anxiety that I can truly understand and feel, even for times within myself, and
Mm-hmm.
just awaken from that into the true moment of what am I consciously choosing to create through that game, through that moment, through that deep grief that is required from us to just constantly die, shed off the old, and re-emerge the new within ourselves and with one another. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. And it's so important. Like, yeah, if there's an enemy, really, it is the system and the energy field created by it that leads to, I mean, we were talking about this when we met earlier this week, a system that can drop bombs not only on people, innocent people, children, women, that have nothing to do with the geopolitics that are leading to the conflict. A system that can do that, not only that, but also drop bombs on the land and destroy the land that people get sustenance from, destroy the myriad other relations, beings that live in the land. Like, that's a system that is so off track. It's hard to fathom. Like that has to be the ultimate enemy if we're going to use those terms. And that system cannot be distilled down to one person, right? So this sense of wanting to blame presidents or prime ministers or war generals or, you know, even a group of people that do horrible things, like you can't distill that the momentum, the monstrosity and the immensity of that system down to those people.
Mm.
You know, so then, okay, well then how does the system change if that's the enemy? How do you face it? And I think, you know, what you're describing in your various shares is the exploration of that at the very least. And what I'm hearing is that it really has a lot to do with the inner terrain, that how you relate with the world is intimately connected with how you're relating within yourself. And I'm reminded how Michael Meade, I think, again, to bring him up, he says that it's inner change. It's the inner change that precedes outer transformation every time. And so what does, because I'm thinking of forgiveness right now, you know, the fact that those mothers are able to forgive. And I'm reminded of a story. I'm not going to share it all, but this powerful story of where this man, his son, gets caught up in some, you know, young teenage man bullshit, and he ends up getting shot and killed by this other young man. And so there's a whole trial that happens, and the father shows up to the trial, and the verdict is that young man's guilty. He shot and killed this man's son. And at the end of the trial, he goes up to the young man and he looks him in the eyes and he says, "I'm going to kill you one day." And so that young man goes to prison. And not too long after, that father of the young man who was murdered by this other young man who's in prison goes to visit him and just visits. They have a conversation. Who knows what was said? And he continues to visit. And over time, he starts bringing gifts. And there's some kind of connection being made. It's very interesting. And there's a rhythm. And this happens for some years. And that young man eventually is put up for parole. And he gets it. And when he's released from prison, that father of the young man who was murdered goes to this other young man. He picks him up from the prison. And he says, "Remember when I said I was going to kill you one day?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "What I meant was I'm going to kill the young man that could do something so horrible. And I believe I've done that. So what I want to offer you is another chance. Come live with me and my family. I'm going to get you a job, and I'm going to give you a beautiful life." You know, like that's a true story. So that's a pathway. It's not a fantasy. It's absolutely within the realm of possibility. And like I said earlier, I think it's absolutely necessary. So speak to us here as we're kind of nearing the end, Didi. Speak to us of forgiveness.
I feel if we will go into the individual stories for the daughter who can forgive her father for abusing her sexually, and for the son who was abandoned by his mother when he was young, and the forgiveness is essential state where we can create and aim to live in, as we all has things to forgive for. Like, we need to recreate new stories, rewire our story through forgiveness. There is no other way that I would be able to live on an energetic level of my being that can create harmony and connection and intimacy if I haven't actually overcome the state of hurt and betrayed and being abandoned. And that can be overcome only through forgiveness. And forgiving is, I don't say it as either to the person or to myself. It's forgiven to the way that this world is moving. You were meant to be suffered. You were meant to live in pain for moments for you to awaken into true peace and joy and love. That's how life works. And the majority of people has relationship with pain and with suffer as if it's a negative thing to feel. So there is a constant rejection from those states or from those emotions. And the whole approach of welcoming pain, welcoming grief, welcoming suffer into my body. Actually, like I said earlier, I'm gonna shed off the armor. I'm gonna open my heart. That's actually what I'm trying to protect on. It's my heart to feel that pain, and I'm gonna open my heart and show up in my vulnerability to let this pain penetrate me, let this suffer penetrate me, let this sword of death kill me, so I can find that true forgiveness, so I can try that rebirth that can occur in any moment of letting go of things that are not serving us any longer and belongs to the past, so I can create the future from a vision, from a prayer, and not based on past memories. So I need to let that sword like kill me and be willing to die. And for me, forgiveness, it's inevitable connected to the willingness of dying, because I'm forgiven to that story where I was the victim to that circumstances, and finding the ability of being the creator, co-creator with God, with spirit, with the universe, and finding the life force energy through every and each of death experience that I'm willing to explore and to walk through. That's the sense of forgiveness for me. The
Mhm.
walk, the path from death to life, from death to life.
Mhm.
Nowhere.
Yeah,
Mm,
I fully agree with that. And that was another thing we were talking about earlier this week. Just the importance of practicing conversations with ourselves and with each other, not just verbally, but somatically,
mm,
ritually, engaging in these various ways of conversing around the theme of death.
mm,
Because I think that's another core issue in any war-torn place, because any war-torn place is built on, well, it's not built only on this, but one of the building blocks is retaliation,
mm,
is an eye for an eye, getting people back. And at this point in 2025, it's just, there's been so many thousands of years of that just, it's such a deep current that who knows who started it. You know what I mean? So it's just this like kind of psychotic spiral of consciousness.
mm,
I think a way to kind of pierce through that that haze that can be churned up from that chaotic spiral is to have the courage and willingness to meet death in a conscious way, and not just when it actually arises on the physical plane, but to
mm,
meet death at all the different layers of our being, and to share that meeting and what we learn from those meetings with one another in an
mm,
honest way, in a tender way, to not turn away from it, to move toward it. Because like you're saying, death is, I mean, I think death is the greatest teacher,
mm,
really.
mhm,
And it's the denial of death that leads to so much distortion in our inner world that then manifests outwardly.
mm,
And that distortion oftentimes is violence, because, you know, when you fear something so greatly, you're going to fight tooth and claw against it
mhm,
so that it doesn't exist anymore.
mm,
But the tenderness that's left in the wake of meeting death for what it really is, it's that kind of tenderness that I think allows us to know peace and to know forgiveness in a different way.
mhm.
And so it's this fear and this denial that's totally understandable. I want to be clear on that, right? And I feel that too.
And we need to live it and we need to experience it as if it's ours. And we are that fear, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yes. Not to demonize the fear,
Hmm.
but to move into the fear, right? Because I think that the distortion and the violence comes from the moving away from it. We're so scared that we run in the other direction. And
But
that
not to be identified with that fear.
yes, yes. Well, to know the fear as a doorway,
Hmm.
that it's a passageway into greater consciousness,
Hmm.
into pain, right? And like you were saying, and I've mentioned this before too in the project, Carl Jung says there is no coming to consciousness without pain.
Hmm.
And I mentioned this recently as well. There's a Hopi proverb, in death I am reborn, or in
Hmm.
death I am born, not reborn, in death I am born.
Hmm.
And so it's so vitally important because of so many reasons. But I'm just thinking right now, how many people have died in this war just in the last few years? Like, so many. There it is. It's right there. You can look up videos of it, I'm sure,
Hmm.
right? It's happening right there.
Hmm.
So there's options. There's choice points when you meet that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're speaking to, is like how much consciousness is being brought to those choice points, how much heart, how much rooted reality, how does meeting that shift our perception and our identity? How does it move us naturally in service of life and love? And in service of life doesn't mean in denial of death. In service of life means in service of death as well.
In the embracement of death.
Yeah.
Just life without death. And I feel also that the awakened souls are the ones that were willing to die before actually that day that we leave our body. We're not waiting for this moment to actually experience that, as that can be experienced in every single moment. And it's right here as life. And so the more I'm not turning my back towards that and just feeling the attachment towards what can give me externally that life force energy, actually the easiest way that I realized that the more that I'm walking towards that, this is the easiest path for me to find life again and to really feel in that true sense of what is life within me. And it's just, as you said, by meeting death and by meeting fear, by meeting pain. And the more we will learn how to grieve together as a tribe in circles, the more we understand that this war is not just their war or their war, it's all of us war. These children that are dying, these people that lose their houses, it's not theirs stories, it's mine. And I am connected and woven into these stories since the day I was coming here. So the more I will be engaged with what is happening, the more I will be willing to grieve together, to cry. And that's the only place that we can rebirth this new chapter, this new evolutionary phase of what does it mean to live the human experience in a whole new perspective of not one against another, and actually finding that there is a greatest wholeness and greatest capacity of life that we can all grow together with Mother Earth, the more that we're going to be willing to hold grief and death together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking now about how when we die, Didi, when our bodies perished and we move on, our bodies stay in this earth, right? And unless you seal your body up in a fucking metal coffin and, you know, airtight and do all the weird shit to the body to keep it, right, perfect, immaculate under the earth. If you allow your body to decompose into the earth, how it's meant to. I mean, my body, your body, you know, it could feed Palestinian mothers. You know what I mean? Like, so, like the organic flesh and atoms of my being are going to be recycled into the web of life. And all of the so-called enemies that I could name throughout my life of grievances and pains and, you know, those enemies, their children and grandchildren are going to be sustained from my flesh. So when Rilke invites us, when he says, and if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing waters speak, I am. I mean, that's what the darkness calls forth. You are the river. You are the flow. You're not separate from Earth's cycles. And so your enemy, you know, might actually carry the signature of grandma. It's really profound and, as far as I understand, true. And I think the implications, when taken seriously, are far greater than we might be willing to admit from a small sense of self.
Heaven or hell is here on earth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one voice can take us either to that direction or to the other every moment.
Yeah. So I just want to be, you shared with me, we're at the end here, and I'm just so grateful for this, Dee Dee, and I'll share more thanks in a moment, but I just want to share for the listeners, you and I were, again, we were talking earlier this week, and I kind of inquired into, like, are there people in Israel, like, really standing up and saying, like, hey, like, no more? And, like, is there a mass movement? And you said, yes, there is. And I just want people to know that, because being on the outside, I'm only keeping in touch with what's happening there, like, minimally. And I think what's coming down to me is all kinds of propaganda that I don't know how to sift through. And so the beauty of having you here right now, literally in Israel right now, could you just give us a sense of what you're seeing around the way in which people are being stirred and moved? Of course, there's going to be a whole population of people that are in that retaliation mode, that are totally caught in that, right?
All colors of the rainbow.
All colors, right? So I just want to highlight for people who don't know, and who are just being fed propaganda, like, highlight the colors that are really shining grace and beauty and forgiveness and love.
As you mentioned, the news, the social media is filtered by the ones who are sponsoring this technology and the way that we can be fed with information. So I just want to remind of that it is not a necessary reliable source that I would be, take or nourish my mind with what is happening in the world. And so, like I've mentioned earlier, the people that are coming together, the Israeli and the Palestinians, in that beautiful movement of thousands of people going into protest almost daily and just like shouting against the war and bringing back the hostages and stop the killing and the genocide in Gaza. And I feel like the more we will come, the people, and share together information and understand that beyond what is being presented to us, there is so much more that was hidden from us for not being awakening to the truth, for not understanding our true power. And that's the beautiful movement that is rising here. That I feel that was the initiatory seed that was kind of like growing in our bodies since COVID, since October 7, understanding that we've been fed by information that is not reliable. And so you can't trust someone that is keep on breaking their words, right? Just even on a normal single person. So the same you're going to do with nation. If you are responsible enough of navigating your life towards what is right, what feels right. And so the people that are coming together and wanting that peace, that will be the way to lead into a new revolution, into a new way of living on this land and in a global scale. And just that's what my prayer is for. And I would end with that. It's just like reminding us that we have the power. We don't need to have bombs or finances or control of bank systems or corporations. We have the power as humans. At the moment that we arrived here on this earth, we have an immense power to awaken and to use this power in different technology that we can be awakened to, which is not presented in the physical realm or in the way that we've been living by so far. And so I just want to be a reminder of that the truth can come when you will be seeking, when we will be seeking for more of coming together as the simple people, not trying to build another hierarchy, exactly as it was happening here in October 7th, when the whole country was collapsed. What was holding this situation was the people donating each other food, homes, and protection and security. And there was an immense movement of just like coming and bringing together everything that we had. So we have more than what we are thinking. Just knowing that we don't need to wait for these moments of trauma, of war, to realize that we can come together and create a whole new structure of a world that can be harmonized, our heart in a field, in a shared field where we can feel peace, true peace, and give it back to the land and to the next generation, to our children. Yeah, this is my true prayer for all of us. Mm-hmm.
Me too. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so important, and really appreciate you and your voice and your heart and your care and your beauty and your grace. And I'm really grateful to be your friend and so honored to share your voice and your heart and your beauty and your grace here with all those who tuned in today.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being here, Didi.
Thank you, Tay. So much love to you.